Hello.
Hello.
I guess I better be sending this out to, I don't know what,
And
uh,
yeah, for whatever reason, that's happened to me a couple times too, or a version of the usual link that I send out doesn't doesn't work, but this worked fine. So
cool. Okay.
yeah, send that out.
Everybody a little bit of extra time, because I
Yeah,
just sent the same link to everybody. Yeah, here they come. Yeah, I must have some kind of, password on it because I don't normally. Hey, y'all.
Hi,
Sorry about,
everybody.
sorry about the, I guess I have a passcode on my Zoom.
Password is not 123. Just
Password
FYI.
23. Okay.
That's what all my passwords are. So I always try that.
Smart. All right, let me just make sure I've got everybody. So that, I guess I sent it to everybody. So y'all are here, so that's good. Yeah. Unfortunately, if they send it out to other friends, it's not going to be there, but
yeah. I just forwarded it to a couple of my collaborators who are going to join
cool.
us,
Cool. Good.
so they should have that.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. How's everybody
Yeah.
doing?
Good. I was just going to ask if people were doing finals this week or next week, or maybe you're done. I don't know.
No, we still have a few weeks. What, week and a half, something like that.
Yeah, same as us.
Today is official last day of school because of the Monday holiday thing. And of course, I have a Monday night class. I have a class at 6. Then it's grading.
There you go. That's it. That's all.
That's all.
So close.
Nothing.
So close.
Grading is just
Nothing.
nothing. Yeah, but it is.
Exactly.
Mhm. Yeah. Let me just send this out.
I'm getting a few emails about passcode, so I'm sending the link again.
Yes. Well,
Right.
send the new link because I obviously have a password on my. Yeah, so send the link I just sent you, please.
Okay.
Let's see. Good. Adrian's here.
Yeah, we'll get started in just a second. Let's give everybody a second to get here and just then we'll do, I guess, a few notes and then jump into it, Jonathan.
Great. Aaron, where are you at in the semester? Do you see the light at the end of the tunnel yet? Or are you still in the midst of major projects?
I'm done with classes and just grading.
Wow. You,
Yeah.
you're like everybody's future. How does the future look, Aaron, once
I know,
the
right?
final projects are
I
done?
finished like last Monday and everyone was like, "How are you done so early?" But it's because I actually took people to Houston, so that was the last class.
Gotcha.
Very nice.
Hi.
Hi, Ben.
Hello. So, welcome everybody. We're going to give everybody, I'll do a few little notes while we wait for everybody to join because I sent a link out that had a password, but I did send the password. So, people are coming in a little late. Um, but for those of you who haven't been to IXA Alliance, this is really our first programming meeting for the year, even though we did a really large event at South by Southwest, which was, we did a panel and then we did a large party that showcased work from about 6 different universities. And but this is the sort of official start of our IXA programming. And so it's going to be every month, the fourth Thursday of every month, um,
Monday.
Monday of every month.
We wish it was the end of the week.
I don't know what day it is, honestly. It is my last day of classes today. But yeah, fourth Monday of every month. And with the exception of next month, it will be May 19th because of Memorial Day. But we'll keep everybody posted on that. So today we've got uh, so today, Jonathan is going to be presenting on his Dance Squared project, which we're going to introduce in a second. And then in May, we're going to have a presentation by Josh Blankton on Engage. And we're going he'll prep us before we go in, but we will be in the Engage platform. And then in June, on June 23rd, we're going to go into using Comfy UI, which is a generative AI tool that you can use on your own computer, a little bit like Blender, that for using 2D, for building 2D and 3D worlds. That's where we're at right now. So, right now, let's go ahead and I'm just going to let Jonathan introduce himself and introduce his work and then begin his presentation. And I think he's got some collaborators on here as well. So take it away, Jonathan.
Wonderful. Yes, and I have one collaborator who is also locked out, so I'm making sure that I've got the right link to send him.
Let me
So
put it in.
I'm just going to resend that again, since
There's
he'll be
Bill.
integral to this. There we go. There's Bill. Wonderful. Um, Good. And Bill is actually going to give me a bit of a hand with the presentation today, but I'll get to that in a second. So um, first, Elizabeth and everybody, thank you so much for allowing me to be the kind of guinea pig for these presentations for IXA. I'm very excited to share about Dance Squared. This is a research and performance project I've been working on with Adrian Fang, who's one of my co-creators and choreographer of the piece, who's here with us, and Bill Cools, who is the systems architect and interaction designer, who is here as well. And in the spirit of doing something a bit novel, we decided to do that as well with this presentation. But first, I'm going to need sharing to be enabled, Elizabeth, so that I can kick things off properly.
Should be able to now.
Great. Okay. So, it's in the presentation mode. Okay. All right. So, Dance Credits, as I said, is an interactive research and performance project. And this is a piece that I've been working on with Adrian and Bill and our other co-creator, Hui Peng, from the School of Computer Science. We're all faculty members at UMD from various parts of campus. And this is a project that really leverages using interactive technology in an immersive setting to get at some novel ways of combining science and technology. And so what I would like to do today is to start off, since we are an immersive interactive bunch, is to do a little bit of an experiment with you all. And what I'd like you to do is just to imagine that you've shown up at your local performing arts center to see a dance piece. And when you walk inside the theater, they say, "Thank you so much for coming and being our research participant tonight." And you're given one of these. It's an informed consent to use the data that we're going to collect from your phones as part of our research. And you'll notice that there's a little QR code up in the corner, along with very official sounding questions that seem like we're doing real research, because we are doing real actual research, as well as it being a conceit for the performance itself. So let me make that a bit bigger. So you should be able to scan this QR code on your device. And this will take you to the actual browser interface that we use for the show. So what I thought would be fun before I tell you really anything about this is to have the experience of an audience member walking and going, "What is this?" And getting a little bit of a taste of the user interface that we have. So you'll see that there are some questions about whether you would like to agree to share data or not. Whether or not you agree, you will still be able to participate in the performance. We've got a couple of onboarding questions that we ask you. So don't take too long to think about them, but give an answer, and I'll give everybody a second to do that. Great. So now imagine that into the lobby where you're finishing up your onboarding questions. I'm going to walk out and I'm wearing a lovely white, very official looking lab coat. This is Dance Squared on it, but quite sharp. And I'm going to thank you for being our research participants. And I'm now going to lead you in to our simulation space, which is how we've transformed the theater. When you walk in, it's almost an empty space, very sort of holodeck looking with projection surfaces on either side. And when we get in there, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to start up the system and we'll kick off our experiment. Great. So now you can look at your phones for instructions. And you're going to know when to interact via your phone throughout the experiment when you hear this sound and see this. So now if you look at your phone, ideally in a minute, you will see this question that has popped up here on your device, assuming that our system is working.
Yeah.
Do you see the question on your device? No. Oh, good. It's like a real experiment. There are bugs.
Do you want us to refresh?
Bill, there we go.
Oh, here we go.
Fantastic. All right. So you have these two options. So you will be able to click on the vote button and you'll have 10 to 12 seconds to vote for whichever option you would prefer. And after about 10 seconds, the voting window will close.
I can vote more than once. Oh, oh, who's tapping?
there we go.
All right, great. That ends the live demo portion of our presentation today. Thank you for being our guinea pigs for that. It's very interesting trying to translate something that is done by our automated show control system and to try to translate that into Zoom and to slides. But I hope you get a little bit of a sense of two things from this. One is that we're using a familiar interface for the audience to understand what their agency is inside of the world, who they are as research participants in this experience, and a little bit of how the narrative is going to progress and that it's going to be cumulative from one answer that is then remembered and influencing the one that comes after. So now let me back up a little bit and give you a little overview of a sense of what the full performance looks like and where dancers and robots come into play. Sorry, just realized that we don't have sound. Is that right?
No sound.
Correct. Yeah, no
There
sound.
is sound? Okay.
I'm not hearing any.
No, there's
No,
no sound.
correct that we don't have sound.
You may not have checked the with sound box when you started sharing.
Great. Sorry about that. Do we have sound now?
No.
You have to reshare when that happens.
Got it. Yeah, I had opened it up and then it went away. So fascinating that you still sort of understood what the onboarding was, even though the whole AI voice that was playing during all of those long pauses could not be heard. That would explain some of the curious looks I was seeing on people's faces. Um, that, great. Wonderful experimentation. Let me stop share and just reshare again. Yeah, I thought people were going to note that for us. Anyway, I still think you can kind of get a sense of it. The only aspect that you're missing is that there's an AI voice that is leading people through this whole shebang. So when you chose Juliet, you got a female voice that was then letting you know things like you can vote more than once. So let's back up and talk a little bit about what this whole experience is. So it is an interactive dance and robotics project. And really what we're getting at here is exploring an audience's sense of agency in regards to the future of technology. Where is technology going? And how much do you feel like you're along for the ride, or that collectively we're able to shape where technology goes? And so the voting mechanism of people being able to vote collectively is a way for us to simulate that. And then the choreography, the robotics, the AI that's used, the other design elements become ways of kind of painting a very artful interpretation of that agency.
Jonathan,
So
I think
using,
you're sharing your presenter view, just FYI, if you want to flip
got
view.
it. Thank you. How about now? Nope. Yes, no.
Yes, perfect.
Fantastic. Great. So the smartphone interface and the branching narrative structure that we have, it runs over the course of 26 questions. They start very simple in this way that people have strong opinions about. And as we go through the show, the questions become more pointed and specific about our relationships to technology in the present, about wearable robots, and about where technology may be sending us in the future. And based on that structure, there's over 500 million different combinations of content that the audience may experience over the course of the show. And this interface really allows us to create some interesting relationships between each audience member with each other in this space, since for most of the time that's mediated via technology. And then there's some moments they can choose to interact directly with each other. The multiple votes was actually something that started off as a bit of a bug in the system. And then we quite liked it because it allowed people to express their opinions more strongly or not. And also just created some very strong responses from people.
Can I ask a
And
quick question, Jonathan?
yes, go for it.
Sorry, just to set up questions. So this is a live performance, audiences come with their phones, and then are they on a stage with the actors getting these questions occasionally during the performance? Or is it like 26 up front? Like, how does that interplay work?
Great question. So it is peppered throughout the performance. Again, I think because the audio was not working for the first part of this presentation, that's definitely a little bit fuzzy. So yes, that experience once you're in the theater is that at different moments you hear a bell sound, and you know that that's when you're supposed to interact with your phone, and that is sprinkled throughout. So it is in a way sort of an episodic progression through the show with these different interaction points, then turning the content that's on stage in different directions. And does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually working on a project where we go between audio listening and augmented reality, and we're using
Yeah,
like a similar chime thing. So cool to see her thinking the same.
very cool. And so where all this adds up is a final, essentially live captured AI dance video montage that essentially is using a stream diffusion model to take the live capture of the dance from the robot, and then using all of the answers from the audience's questions, it's then interpreting that in a unique way every single night. And so that's kind of the way that we then end the performance and sort of culminate this ongoing thought experiment with the audience throughout the performance piece. So the full performance lasts about 30 minutes. And at the end of it, I let people know, thank them for being our research participants. And then I lead them to part two, which is called the Dance Squared Laboratory. And so this was something that we took advantage of the fact there was this extra space at Oregon State University where we did our most recent performance. And we took the research that we had and combined sort of a museum exhibition with the idea of it being a working laboratory. The audience is invited to become research fellows with us and to add in their own questions, to build their own robot prototypes out of very high-tech materials like pipe cleaners and googly eyes and modeling clay, and basically just to continue the discussion. As you can tell, there's a lot going on in this project, and it moves very quickly. And we wanted to create a space where the audience could really kind of control what they were curious about, what they wanted to find out more about, and really just to get them to think and discuss it more than you would with a typical performance where once you leave the theater, you're kind of left off into the world to maybe talk about it, maybe not. So to speak a little bit more about the research part of it, the in balance with the performance are a couple of different research initiatives that we're working on. So this project started in a robotics laboratory on campus. And the work that we've been doing over the last 3 years via this performance piece has then fed back into some of the other research projects that the robotics lab is doing, and the ways that they've been innovating on other versions of small robotics, especially ones that are interacting with humans on their person. We're also doing a data research and human behavior study with this. That was what that informed consent form was. That's part of the project that Bill Coles is leading up. And so that's an ongoing process where we're looking at the audience data that comes via their phones and seeing what we might be able to extrapolate from that. Are there any ways that thinking about where technology is heading is leading us as a society and essentially our role in that, to see if the experience of the performance influences people's feelings over the course of the night. And so we're trying to kind of poke at some of those questions, and also with all of that data to see if there's other things that jump out at us. And then the final part of it is we've created a series of workshops that engage all ages. One of the great things about Dance Squared is that we've discovered that, in large part, I think because of the phone, it is fun for kids as young as 2 or 3, and for audiences really of any age older than that. And so we've tried to then create workshops to use the themes and subjects of the project as a jumping off point to look at different ways of using movement for design thinking and for engaging with science. We've also done the reverse and worked with dance students and student choreographers to work with technology to come up with new types of movement. And elementary students to think about what are robotics and how would you design a robot to help a human. So those are some of the workshops that we've created. And as it sounds like, we have quite a large team at this point. It's no longer 4 people. It is very much more than that. It's a mix of faculty, students, and alums from the University of Maryland, and they come from all points of campus: computer science, engineering, data science, theater, dance, immersive media. So that's a bit of what the project is now. And I'm going to back up a little bit and say a little bit about how did we get here, because I'm hopeful that one of the things that you'll be able to take away from this talk today is about some of the things that we learned about what worked and what was a challenge in putting up a multidisciplinary project that's really fusing art, performance, and technology in novel ways. Certainly, since most of us are from a university setting, I think it'll be very relatable, and also people coming from industry. I think there's some takeaways from that as well. So in this case, where we started was with the robot. So the robot was the inspiration for our jumping off point. And essentially, the two areas that we started with was one, could we discover new use cases for the robot? The lab at that time had been looking at ways that the robot could be a physical trainer. It could do different kinds of diagnostics if it was on your body. It could be a little companion. So there were some different things that they were testing out, but they were curious about, like, what if we look at it inside of a performance context? What might we learn? And also, we were interested in seeing how working with a robotics technology might innovate the way that we explore dance and the experience of dance for an audience. And so the way we started was just getting in a room and observing. What do we notice? What's interesting about this tiny robot on a dancer with just a prototype of the track and the robot? And our first workshops back in 2022 were just looking at how the robot moved. How is the dancer's movement influenced by the robot? And importantly, what do we notice as observers in terms of possible narratives that might come out of just watching this relationship unfold between the dancer and the robot? And so that led to creating sketches. And so the way that we worked with this process was making essentially structured improvs where we took a few parameters and created 2 to 5 minute bits of material. We explored working in unconventional spaces outside of a studio, as we were here in the lobby of the Performing Arts Center, looking at different relationships between the audience and the robot and the dancer, and just various prompts that sort of occurred to us as we're watching. And so it's very much like how a visual artist might create a large painting, and that you start with things like charcoal drawings that are quick to make, quick to discard, and you see what's interesting. Out of this, we start to find a bit of a structure. And as you could tell, a big part of this was the interactivity we wanted with the audience, since that was just something we were curious about as a team, but also that we felt like just simply watching the dance of the robot was only interesting for a few minutes. The novelty eventually wore off. But once you give the audience some agency over what happens, suddenly there's a different dynamic that we found really interesting. And so we drew on the way that square dancing works, where you have a caller who tells the dancers what moves they're going to do next. So the audience kind of takes on that role as the caller in a square dance. And also Twitch Plays Pokemon, which some of you may be familiar with. This was a Twitch stream back in 2014 where an anonymous Australian programmer had allowed the Twitch stream viewers to throw in commands into a chat that would then control the main character in Pokemon Red, which is a Game Boy game. And so over 1 million people ended up participating and playing this game collectively. And it got so unruly at one point, the developer instituted what was called democracy mode. And this meant that you had a 30-second window in which to put in what you thought the next move should be. And whatever got the most votes for that next move, that's what was executed in the game. So we borrowed that structure and put that into the performance context and kind of the way that you see. The other part of the structure element was trying to find the sort of central core or question to hang our hat on. There's so much that you can explore with starting just with some technology and with dance, that kind of finding the sort of central question that we're going after and that ideally the audience is going to pursue as well was one of the first things that we hung on. Then we tested. A couple months after this, we put up a very rough and ready prototype once we had a first version of the interface, the browser-based interface ready. We had a very early version of the costumes you could see. We had very, very rough sketches of what some of the design elements, and we just wanted to see what an audience made of it. We discovered that they really thought the interface was interesting. That's where we discovered the bug about people voting more than once and decided to keep it. And we also found out that the robots are quite delicate, and that a lot of our work was going to be working with the robotics team to not only make the robots more robust. In this case, the robot died right before we started the work in progress showing, so Adrian had to puppet the robot through the whole thing. But also that the way that it interfaced with the track, once you put it in a dance setting, is a lot more rigorous than just how they were testing in the lab. Very quickly, I'm just going to kind of show where we went with this project. So that's where we started. And we were able to perform this a number of different times at UMD, which helped us really push the evolution along. We did a first version with one dancer, one robot, a typical sort of stadium seating situation. Here, the audience is really just telling the robot where to move for the most part. We did a second version where we decided to explore with being site specific. So this was as part of a campus-wide arts festival. And here, Adrian and Bill were our dancers. We're exploring multiple dancers, robots, adding some scenic elements. We played with the Kinect depth sensor and to kind of see what we find with a different narrative. One of the big challenges that came out of this is that we realized that we communicated a lot of what was going on via the projection design and the lighting design, neither of which worked terrifically well when we couldn't control the lighting environment. And so that led us, to version 3, which we did almost exactly a year ago. And that's where the structure of the current version, where it became an immersive piece, really took shape. We did like from the site specific project that the audience is really close to the robot, and that relationship spatially was really useful. And so we figured out a way then to include them in the space with the robots and the dancers, and as well to start to gather analysis from the audiences, data from the audiences. And then that led you to what we kind of showed earlier with the Oregon State version, where we added the post-show laboratory and the stream diffusion model. Should also mention that the stream diffusion use of that came out of a collaboration that we did with Kate Fisher, who's a NYU dance professor, and her company Safety Third. And they're doing a lot of really fascinating work with choreography and real-time generative AI. And that was a fabulous kind of way to involve some more AI in the project. And just looking ahead really quickly, this is, again, the project that's ongoing. We have way too many ideas than we can possibly execute at one time. But one thing that we're really interested in, as you can see, is figuring out how to visualize the data, how to create a version of this that can live on the web so that the audience can answer the questions from the show in a web-based version, which kind of addresses always the challenge with a performing arts piece where only so many people can get to the theater at a specific place at a specific time. And so this allows us kind of from a research standpoint to take a different way at asking these questions of people. We're also looking for other touring opportunities to other performing arts centers around the country, especially university ones, to send the project to, and looking at a version that would incorporate some more explicit XR elements in order to tour it abroad, since right now the set that we're using would be a little hard to get in a plane and send it overseas. And so, yeah, it's a big, wonderfully ambitious project, and any big ambitious project requires a good amount of funding and support. And so as much as I would love to believe it was really just our creativity and blood, sweat, and tears that made this happen, it was also quite a lot of support. So all 3 of the grants that are referenced there are all internal ones at University of Maryland. In particular, I just want to kind of circle that top one. So this was the grant that kind of kicked it off by a university-wide initiative called Arts for All. And so this was launched in 2021, 2022 as a way to inspire more projects, collaborations that centered social justice, arts, and science kind of working together. And that initial grant is then what got Wei Peng to reach out to me to say, hey, you want to do something for this grant? And so just that kind of push really got us started. Once we had a version that had been performed, we were able to get faculty research grants and support to pay the graduate students that worked on the project. We also had a fair amount of department support. Most of this came in the form of equipment, of rehearsal space, and of materials. And then, as I mentioned, the Arts for All initiative. We were also really assisted by the president's office's communications team that took an interest in the project and created a great, essentially like 5-6 minute documentary of the project that was what got the attention of Oregon State University. They saw that video and said, "This looks like exactly what we're looking for to program as part of our performing arts season. Would you, be able to bring that out?" And then the final part was just having opportunities to perform this in front of an audience. So the different festivals and conferences that you could see through the different 4 versions of this project were absolutely essential for us figuring out what worked, what didn't, and really pushing this very complicated project forward in a way that could still be really enjoyable and legible to an audience. And yeah, as I mentioned, Oregon State University being part of that as well. Okay, so as much as I would love to say that was all easygoing, and there were never any uh, failures or falling on our faces. There, of course, were quite a lot, and they were very informative. I am capturing not even, I think, 10% of the ones, but just to share a few that I think are relevant for other projects. One was simply thinking about how the different aspects of the team that is put together work differently. We have folks coming from dance who are working in a very organic, embodied, let's get in the room and let's play and let's figure it out fashion. We have people working from a theater background. Often in theater, it's a very linear process where you're starting with a playwright that gives a play as a blueprint to a director, and they give it to the design team, and then the actors are brought in last, right? It's a very sort of in the United States, typically a very regimented and hierarchical process. And then engineering works in a very iterative process. They're going to work in a laboratory. They're going to play with something, test with something, go back, go back, go back, go back. So figuring out how to create a shared language from the get-go was a big part of what we had to sort through. And that has taken us quite a long time to really feel like we've all got that shared vocabulary, but feel like that's something that's grown quite a lot over the course of the project. There's also the challenge of the fact that it's one thing to build a very cool prototype with hardware like a robotics system or a software system like our network that runs all of the lights, the sounds, the audience database, and the projections and the AI. And so they'll work in theory, but often not work in a performance setting where you need it to work basically 100% of the time. And it wasn't until actually we got to Oregon State University that we had figured out a combination of really what we had created is enough redundancy so that if a robot failed, if part of the system failed, we usually had a pretty good idea of how to seamlessly continue. And if we didn't seamlessly continue, well, we told people it was an experiment anyway. So just like today, it's sort of part and parcel. Project management is actually a big part of it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that one of the important things is to have some buddies, in our case, really pay attention to the scheduling of team members who all have very different schedules and often couldn't be in the same room at the same time. I'm based in LA. My collaborators are mostly based in Maryland, although we had other designers in other parts of the country. And so oftentimes there's a rehearsal, as is happening here, where I'm looking at it through Zoom, and I, as the director, can only see so much. And so one of the challenges was figuring out how to keep the project moving forward, even when people could not be in the same space at the same time. And I think actually one of the upsides is that I think it meant that more responsibility for the storytelling was placed onto various members of the team, and that meant that they had more stake and more buy-in in the project. And I think ultimately made it better. The other half of this is also about how you take something that is very conceptually complicated and constantly changing and creating documentation to keep everybody on board. I'm stealing this from Adrian's presentation on this project where she talks about what it's like to be a dancer inside of this. So the very first version, some of the challenges that cropped up very quickly were how do you create choreography when the robot is in the shop for 2 weeks and you're not going to get it back and you've got to try to anticipate how it's going to work, even though you know it's going to be different. The second part is that when you're working with a branching narrative, if you put too much of the onus on executing that branching narrative on the dancers and you don't give them a clear way to know what's going to happen next, basically that picture is what happens to their brains. It explodes. So over time, we found ways of cueing the dancers better, and actually that created a useful narrative opportunity, which was adding the AI voice in, so that every time a choice was made, you heard the AI voice, except for today. And also making sure that the other design elements were doing a lot of the branching, so it wasn't just the choreography. And by having actually a lot of different design elements working together, no single design element was having to create 500 million different pieces of content. And the final one is institutional. And as I think anybody here would understand, trying to do something at the intersection of different departments and different ways of putting up something and not going through the typical production pipeline creates some novel situations. So just on a basic level, because this was essentially a faculty research project that was in connection with a university-wide initiative, Arts for All, and not directly part of the dance department or theater department or the Clarice Performing Arts Center that handles a lot of the production and spaces on campus. It meant we had to sort of try to fit ourselves into a schedule of spaces and production and tech support that was already booked out and had been booked out 18 months previously, and we're 6 months from a performance date trying to figure out how we're going to make all that work. It meant that oftentimes we didn't have the tech time that we needed to really put up a piece that is difficult to do, as you can imagine, when you don't have the tech pieces to interact with each other over a long enough amount of time. We also had challenges in terms of communication. So oftentimes figuring out production logistics meant not just going to one production person in the theater dance performance studies program, but they then going to the Clarice Performing Arts Center, who might actually be overseeing the space or the technical request. And so there's a little bit of a telephone game that just meant that there needed to be more time and attention paid to how that communication needed to work. And then there's just simply the challenges we've actually discussed, I think, in different meetings that oftentimes universities are a challenging place to pay people. So paying vendors, contractors, students, and faculty is challenging and just means that there's more time and attention that's needed. So yes, with that said, a few takeaways to recap some of the things that I've been talking about that are specific to Dance Squared that I think are useful probably to think about for other projects that anyone here might want to create in this vein. One is about leveraging familiarity. I think it was really essential finding the phone as an interface for something that put audience members in an unusual physical relationship to the content and put them in an unusual role. And the familiarity of the phone really allowed people to engage more quickly because it was so familiar and worked regardless of age and background. Thinking about how the narrative that's being constructed, whether it's a psychological narrative or something that's a little bit more abstract, thinking about how that could potentially serve the research goals is useful. You don't necessarily need it to be as meta as ours was, where we're creating a research project as a conceit to support an actual research project. But there's some fun ways that you can play with the relationship between those two things. And finally, to see if there are ways to use interaction design and technology to support the creative and scientific research. So it's very handy that we have a device that automatically catalogs a lot of the kinds of audience data that we're looking to gather. In other projects that I've researched, they oftentimes need to figure out how they're going to observe the audience members, and it's sort of something that gets tacked on to the event as a side thing. And so figuring out how the observation and cataloging of audience data as a sort of essential part of the piece is something to consider. On the collaboration side of it, thinking about how you create that shared vocabulary, of course, is essential. Balancing having a clear structure, but one that's really flexible so that it's inviting everybody that's part of the design and creative team to have input on the way that content gets made, but kind of keeping everybody moving forward in a specific direction. Figuring out how you make the right kind of documentation so that as you have different people working at different times, so like the robotics side is going to take X amount of time with the hardware, and that's going to be different than the design team. And when those things happen are different. So creating that central documentation for everybody, especially also thinking about bringing in new collaborators, is really something to consider. And also just what kind of collaborators are going to work for something like this. I think one thing that made this project so successful is that everybody on the team was curious and flexible. So even though we had people from the robotics team coming in who had never done anything in the world of the arts at all, the very first day when Adrian was like, great, let's all get up and let's all move together, everybody was game. And I think that that actually set not only a really important tone for the piece, but also actually was an important point of reference for those robotics designers. And on the flip side, those of us coming from the creative arts have spent time working with the robots and the other technology, and those designers who have been seeing those areas to really understand how those technologies work, at least on a basic level. And thinking about that for students, figuring out how you can give students a fair amount of responsibility over what they're making, but create the context so that they can succeed, and that to just so that it balances that we're working in a professional setting with making sure that they've got the right amount of accountability and support so that they can be successful with what you're asking for them. Yeah, and as I said, production management is key. Again, we had 3 people essentially serving as production manager for this piece, especially as we were preparing to tour it across the country. Test early, test often. It's true with emerging technology, and certainly still true once you add performance onto it. And it takes 3 times longer than you think it's going to take. Also, if there's a way that the piece that can be multi-platform because of the technology that you're creating, just have a thought to that, and especially as that applies to accessibility or other places that you might be able to take your project down the road. And there's the institutional part of it. So where can you find buy-in? If you can you build in the lead time to be able to coordinate and collaborate with other stakeholders if it's on campus, or if you're doing something that's not part of a university, that's off campus, so that doing a novel project in terms of its process or its technology or how an audience is going to experience it doesn't get shortchanged because you don't have time to sort of work out novel details that people aren't used to. I think projects like this, one of the things I feel really good about is that we were able to really show the value of these kind of collaborations, that there are tangible ways that the artistic process has informed the science of this piece. So one of our robotics engineers who's a PhD student in the robotics lab is also doing research on using small robotics for accessibility purposes, and he's won an award recently for that research. And he's been kind enough to say what an impact working on this project and building the robots and building the final version of the track and going with us to Oregon State University and being part of that process has been useful for the way that he thinks about the engineering tasks that he does in other areas. And so that's always great to hear when you have a student, a collaborator coming from outside the arts arena who um, is really able to see the value of exploring the technology in this way, and is then taking that and using that towards other ends outside of an artistic context. Great. So that's a lot of talking from me. So I'm going to then turn it over. We've got a few minutes left for questions or clarifications. Thank you again for being part of experimenting with how we might translate our interaction design to Zoom. And that was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Fascinating. So I guess just unmute or if you have a question.
I had a quick question. First of all, Jonathan, awesome, and collaborators, really amazing. Every slide, I would be like, wow, this is a lot, and then you'd be like, plus we had the robotics department, and then be like, oh man, that's amazing. Then be like, plus we did this, so it's a huge scale. So I'm glad we were able to get behind the scenes there. My question, I guess, relates to like the initial ask to participate. Do people say like, no, I don't want to share my stuff with you, and that
Sure.
how do you handle that? I'm just curious
Yeah.
what level of engagement you get right off the bat, just based on your experience.
Yeah, I'd actually probably have to ask Bill in terms of what percentage of people say yes or no. The good news is regardless of whether you say yes or no, you still can use your phone, you still can engage with the piece. We just don't hold on to your data at the end of it. So you're still able to have the full experience. So yeah, Bill's saying a very small percentage opt out. Is that right, Bill? Yeah. So most people say yes. And I think part of that is introducing that consent form and trying to make sure that they understand what it is. So it's not like a scary, what are you trying to take from me form, but they understand that what we're collecting is anonymized, that it's connected to the human that you're seeing. And I think and because it's in a performing arts context, I think that goes a long way towards people being willing to say yes to it.
Can I
Cool.
ask a question, Jonathan?
Yeah, please.
This is super cool. I'm so glad you kicked us off on this program. I have two questions. The first one is in regards to like distribution that you took it to University of Oregon, because like the
Mhm.
Texas Performing Arts is asking me to always keep an eye out for immersive projects that can come here.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Like, what do I need to know to like if people, how do you like move things from a distribution standpoint?
Yeah, and that way it actually works pretty much like any performing arts piece that the Performing Arts Center would bring in. So
Okay.
with the Prax Performing Arts Center at Oregon State University, we worked with their team about it. In that case, we had a good lead time. It was about a year, maybe a little bit more in advance, to line up the dates in their season that worked for them, and then just figuring out the usual logistics of getting the project from Maryland to Oregon State.
And you like
And so
provide the tech documentation,
yeah, so we have a tech package, a tech writer that explains
tech writer.
the
Yeah.
type of space that we need, the materials that we'll be bringing, the materials or equipment that we would need from the performing arts venue, and some things that are a bit unusual, like the fact that because it's an immersive piece, we can fit comfortably about 40 people in the space at any time. And so we'll do 3 iterations of the show per night. So you get a throughput of about 120 people per night, which for Oregon State, that was the number that they were going for, and that worked out quite well. And so what happens is we're able to bring in one group through as they go out to the laboratory space. Then 15 minutes later, we're able to bring in a new cohort. That other cohort can hang out in the laboratory space as long as possible. Future versions, we would love to have like a coffee station that's there and just encourage people to hang out and, kibitz for the evening. So that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And just as a follow-up, you had a slide about the importance of project management and how do you
Mhm.
communicate a complicated concept that is constantly evolving. I bet you a lot of us are doing that all over the time. You had a really interesting slide, but you
Mhm.
didn't unpack it. And I'm curious, the moving with screens, machines architecture. Can you just describe what that visualization was sharing? In
Yeah, was
regards
that
to that?
that was the one that's kind of had the colored graphs on there?
Yeah,
Is it that one? Yeah, so that was a document when we were trying to put together the kind of essentially the version of the show that occurs now that has a lot more branching than the original version. The original version, because there were fewer design elements and really what changed was the choreography and less the design elements. Um, and because we had a short amount of time, we didn't want the dancer to have exponentially branching options to have to remember and to go, okay, it's that answer plus this answer plus that one, right? It would get way too complicated. Once we started to have a show control system that could handle a lot more complexity because it could automate it,
right.
then then I needed to try to find a way to think about that. Like, what are the parameters um, that we're layering on top of each other? Is it about time, color, movement? Is it about the materials? Like, right, we don't use the robots right away. The robots come in section two. Okay, and then do we save the projection design till later? Right. So is some of those things. And as Adrian is putting in the chat, that slide in particular is from Miro board. So I use Miro a lot for initial design documentation, brainstorming, concept mapping.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Um, yes, yes. And Adrian saying it was also creating a very detailed running scripts. So a bit like a narrative theatrical script, and that's got all the dialogue and the stage directions. But it's also got more information in terms of when cues are firing and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so the combination of those really specific documents, and then the Miro board's great because then the other designers can come in, take some of those really rough crude kind of documents I'm making, and then create more refined documents on there. And then again, that becomes a central place to come back to, look over material, be able to collaborate asynchronously by leaving comments and notes and so that sort of thing.
Great.
Very cool. I have a million questions, honestly, but I'm not going to ask them because we're getting towards the end here. Super interesting and you know, complex. And I really am curious about how people give feedback to the whole experience and how y'all sort of adjust based on that. But I'm not going to ask that right now because we're really close to the end. But I really would appreciate if everybody who's new here and even those who are already here would just sort of introduce yourselves since this is the first time coming to IXAlliance and we welcome you here. And I know many of you all are collaborators with Jonathan, but some of you all are not, like Max. Would you mind just quickly just saying who you are and where you're from? And you probably don't know who we are either. And I'm Elizabeth, and I'm from Georgia State University's Creative Media Industries Institute. But yeah, John, I see you.
Great. I'll do it. John Canning with AMD. I am an XR gadfly. And I look after a bunch of industry partners for AMD in the creative space, as well as supporting productions and in the immersive and interactive spaces.
Great, welcome. Yeah, hey Max.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Max Thomas. I'm a professor of practice at Georgia State at the CMII. I also do a lot of virtual production slash motion capture type stuff, but really, really big into like Gen AI, like kind of comfy open source Chinese models and control net flux based workflows. So really just anything crazy technology based and production, I'm into it. I'd really love to have a talk with the guy from AMD sometime because I would love to see what you guys are kind of up to hardware wise because I've kind of shifted everything full NVIDIA right now, but I love AMD and I'm open to hearing what you guys have for
Our
them.
processors don't suck.
I use all AMD processors, but in the GPU game, I'm looking at things like north of like a Quadro A6000 and like really more like H100, H200 server level processing power for image Gen AI stuff. So super
Sure,
cool.
ping me.
Sure will. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Ben, I see you.
I don't have any questions, but this has been a great session. Thanks for inviting me, Aaron, and nice to meet you all. And great presentation, Jonathan.
Thanks.
Yeah, cool. Anybody else want to, I see Deirdre and Steve. Adrian, we heard about. Go ahead.
Hi. It was great, Jonathan. It was really cool to like hear that all in depth. Bravo. It was it's kind of mind blowing.
Well done. Well done.
Thank y'all. Yeah. Let's see. Anybody else? I guess Adrian.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm in my car, so I can't really
All right.
show. But Adrian, I'm a dance professor at the University of Maryland, and I just love, love, love working with Jonathan and with Bill and Hoishu. It's just the best project ever to be on. And yes, great to be here.
Awesome. Great. Josh, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's coming up next on May 19th?
Yeah, so we're working with the team over at Engage to get a space for us to do an immersive walkthrough. And for anybody that doesn't know me, I'm Josh Bankston, 13 years in the XR space, worked heavily with education and events like South by Southwest XR Film Festival. Deeply moved and impassioned by this specific niche of the industry. And so to that end, we're working on getting us a space in Engage for our next meeting to meet in VR. If you can't be in VR, then you can also log in via a smart device or a PC or a laptop or what have you. please feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about sign up and making sure that you're ready to go to jump into our next meeting space.
Yeah, great. We'll Josh and I'll work together to make sure you all have the links and everything, and there's not a passcode on it uh, before we kick that off. And are there any other updates that people want to give? I really, Jonathan, I really appreciate this very deep dive into the dance in XR, and I feel like that's such a hot space. There's some people over here at Georgia Tech that have been doing a lot of really interesting stuff where you dance with the digital avatar and it mimics your dance moves and anyway, just very interesting stuff.
I'll just do
Yeah, go
two
ahead.
quick announcements. One, last year we were trying to just get our strategic vision and like our plan in place. And then this year, since South by last month, we're really trying to encourage other people to join the Immersive Experience Alliance as we've opened up the membership. So please share the link widely, let other people know about it. We've got a board now in place with Elizabeth running as program chair. And so every month it'll be new programming, and the more the members kind of share what they want, the more we'll personalize it for you. And then lastly, if you want to do chat with everybody more regularly, we did not build our own Discord, but we joined the No Proscenium server that NOAA has actually established, and we're running the ACA channel. So there's a whole academic lane. And so you just have to ask Noah or I if you need access to the academic lane in No Proscenium. And that's where you can find all of us and keep on chatting throughout the month.
Yeah, and we'll
That's
send
a
that.
Discord.
Go ahead. Yeah,
I'll post the link to the Discord.
Yeah. And that's Erin Riley. She is the director. What are you, the executive director?
I'm the chair. I'm the
She's
Immersive
the chair.
Experience Alliance that you guys voted on.
Yes.
So welcome, everyone.
And Erin really helped get this whole thing kicked off, and she's really been spearheading a lot of this. So thanks, Erin.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. So next month, anything else, Elizabeth?
That's it. Next month. And then Max and I are going to do something in June on Comfy UI. But we'll get that going after the May event with Engage, and then we also have the Immerse Journal in August. But we'll send all that out in an email.
Awesome.
Cool.
Y'all have a great day.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanks, Elizabeth, for organizing. Thanks, Jonathan, for being our first one.
Yeah, thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
it was such a pleasure. Please feel free to reach out with any other questions.
Yeah. See y'all May 19th.
See you then.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.